Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of my amendment, which prevents any funding from being used to finalize or implement the CEQ's National Environmental Policy Act guidance on consideration of greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. Earlier this year, the CEQ issued interim guidance for agencies to analyze greenhouse gas and eliminate change effects of their proposed actions under the National Environmental Policy Act. Madam Chair, for decades, radical environmental groups have weaponized NEPA to attack and block natural resources development. They have done so through a variety of techniques, including by colluding with various federal agencies in sue and settle schemes that have poured massive amounts of money into their coffers while doing very little to actually protect the environment or ensure that we can access and use our federal lands and projects to produce oil and gas, coal, hydropower, and nuclear energy. These are just some of the reasons as to why Republicans in Congress have prioritized the passage of H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Costs Act, which is intended to streamline, improve, and expedite the NEPA process while also ensuring that we are protecting our environment. We can do both, and in fact, we have been doing so for decades. I have had multiple constituents reach out to me over the last year seeking assistance in getting various federal agencies to move important projects along in the process. In one such case, a constituent described being stuck on his fourth and final solicitor's review, a do loop that had been going on for literally years. Although they had completed every single task and done every single thing asked of them multiple times, the agency refused to move forward. My staff has since met with the Office of Surface Mining only to be told that there's a queue, as though that is an adequate answer. To date, there has been no movement on this review. This situation represents a failure of the system, and allowing the CEQ to unilaterally impose radical GHG and global warming requirements on these agencies will not make the situation any better. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, and with that I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Wyoming reserves. For what purposes, gentlewoman from Maine seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I claim time in opposition.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentlewoman from Wyoming.
We simply have no accountability, no taking of responsibility, and no consequences for these agencies who fail to carry out their responsibilities. What that means in the long term is that there is ultimately no more gas for our cars, oil to heat our homes, or energy to power our first world economy. What is my point? We do not need to add any more roadblocks under NEPA, making it even more uncertain and difficult for these agencies to process applications. We don't need any more steps, reviews, analyses, or guidance documents to make NEPA more burdensome to our producers, our small businesses, our ranchers, and our manufacturers. We don't need to make it any more difficult to properly manage our national forests or to maintain our water infrastructure. We have reclamation projects that need to be constructed and maintained. We have forests in dire need of management, and we need these things now, not 10 years from now. My amendment defunds the CEQ's and this administration's efforts to use global warming hysteria to further delay such projects that are subject to NEPA. My amendment is also critically important to block CEQ's illegal attempt to avoid compliance with the APA's rulemaking requirements. CEQ doesn't have the authority to issue guidance documents with the force and effect of law, yet that is exactly how this guidance document will be interpreted, as imposing new requirements on project proponents as part of the NEPA review process. We must therefore stop CEQ from implementing a so-called guidance document that is in reality no such thing. CEQ should be forced to go through the public rulemaking process to adopt such wide-ranging changes to the NEPA procedural requirements. The reality is that NEPA was designed to address reasonably foreseeable impacts of a particular project, not to allow agencies to try to guess what temperature it will be 1,000 miles away 75 years from now. I read an article a year ago assessing the global warming hysteria that we are living through. This gentleman who wrote the article made an excellent observation that I believe is worth repeating here. Quote, "The notion that government should impoverish actual human beings as a means of promoting the welfare of humanity is a pagan superstition on par with sacrificing individuals to the sun god, end quote. I couldn't have said it better. We must block the CEQ from pursuing an agenda of impoverishment and government-imposed wretchedness. We must no longer tolerate their bowing to the sun god, and we must return to common sense and rational thinking to our permitting and NEPA process. Please join me in supporting my amendment, and with that, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Wyoming. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.